You're too old, and it's too late to start. Has anyone ever said that to you? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's too late to quit. And oh yeah, you're not too old. In fact, the good news is that it's always the right time to start. You've come to the right place. And me and my friends are going to share our stories of why we will never, ever throw in the towel. Welcome to the Too Late to Quit podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Iftikharuddin. Let's go. Well, hello. Welcome to episode 4 of the Too Late to Quit podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Iftikharuddin, and today it's going to be a little bit of a mini episode. And I want to talk to you about a couple of things that came across my mind when I was working out. And I'm not sure about you, but for me, working out, going into any kind of cardio state is where I've always gotten my best ideas, or what I feel are my best ideas. And there's been a couple doozies out there, but how are we supposed to find out what the doozies are and what the awesome things are unless we put them out? And I've really tried in the past couple of years to practice the idea of putting something out when it's not quite fully cooked. And let me back up for a second there to explain how that relates to me and what it means to me. If I'm baking a cake, obviously I don't want to take that cake out of the oven 30 minutes early just because I was in a rush or I felt like it. However, what I've found is that when it comes to me and creating, if I had my druthers, that cake would never, ever go out of the oven. I'd constantly, let me quick add a little bit of allspice. Maybe I could add a little bit of more vanilla flavoring. I'm sure it needs one more thing, and if I add that last ingredient before it's fully set, then it will be perfect. And every single human being that comes up to my table at the cake bazaar or at the farmer's market and they stop by my table, every single person is going to say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best cake ever." And it makes me laugh saying that because I am painfully self-aware of how I do this. And what I've learned over the years is it feels like I'm taking the cake out of the oven early, and I'm not. And I adopted this attitude of, well, I'll release it now as it is, even though I feel it's not ready or it's not perfect yet. And I can always come back and I can always do another version. I see and hear varying numbers, but it's pretty safe to say that every single day, just on Spotify, there are between 50 and 150. I'm sure by the time this podcast comes out, it will be up to 200,000 brand new songs on Spotify every day. So that can either motivate you or it can make you feel like, well, what's the point? And I think it, for me, sets an interesting precedence because what is the point if I'm throwing my song out? Why am I stressing so much about a song I'm going to release that just on the first day that it's put out into the ethos, at least the digital ethos, and for this example, we're talking about Spotify, what is the point if I do that and it's already going to be in a sea of 100,000+ songs or releases that day? What's the point? And I think that is where I discovered that I am doing this because it is something that I need to express. This is my art that I need to express, and I need to just put it out there. And one thing that I've observed over the past 20+ years of doing this is that all the most amazing, fantastic things in my life have happened when I have put myself out there. Whether it's going to an open mic, whether it's releasing a song, whether it's putting it out onto the internet. I remember once I had written a song on an album, my very first album. It was for the singer Aaliyah. And it was a song called Hush. And I released that song and it was on my website. And I have no idea how, but a woman in London, I think she was in Brighton at the time, found this song. She was doing a documentary on Aaliyah, and she found this song. Her research, let me give you an idea of how extensive her research was. I've never used any kind of SEO, and this is back then when it was even more of the wild, wild west. Never used anything. I just put a song up there. It was on a free player that was baked into the website. I'm just going to keep using cooking analogies. Somehow, in her exhaustive research on Aaliyah, she stumbled across my website. I don't know how many pages deep she was into that search to have found my song, contacted me, and in less than a month, I was sitting at a piano in a church in Brooklyn, and they were recording me for this documentary. They did a short interview, and the song was featured in the documentary, the song Hush. Even today, I will come across people now who are in their early 20s that are named after Aaliyah. They will clarify to me, I was named after the singer. And I say, yes, I'm very familiar with that singer. And then I'll tell them a very quick version of the story, as quick as you can tell it when you're meeting somebody out. And that all came from me putting myself out there. When I listened to the song, is it a perfect recording? No, it was a one take that I did at Sorcerer Sound in Soho, thanks to some amazing, kind people who let me come in after hours, after the piano had already been tuned, and charged me a very, very DIY musician rate. Big shout out to Dick Condas and Vera Barron at Sorcerer Sound in Soho. They could not have been kinder to me, and it was amazing because in that studio, that is where Jeff Buckley had recorded all of the demos for what became Sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk with Tom Verlaine. Just to be in that studio and to see the mic closet and see the Neumanns that I was positive that Jeff had been recording with was, for me, as a huge Jeff Buckley fan, an incredible experience. How did that come along? I was literally looking probably in the yellow pages back then. Recording studios, New York City. Vera gave me a tour, was super kind, and then helped me rearrange a time to come in and record. Sorcerer Sound was such a unique, incredible studio. And it just had it just was oozing good vibes. Again, I put myself out there. Am I a classically trained singer, classically trained musician? No. Something, though, inside of me said, regardless, I want to record this moment in time. Would I have ever predicted that then I would be one day being sent a DVD copy of a documentary about a musician who I thought was so wonderful? No, I would have never foreseen that. And an interesting tangent on that, as this, I don't know what I was thinking saying this is going to be a short episode. I was contacted by the Aaliyah fan club in New York. I was living in New York at the time. And I was invited to perform my song at a memorial in Aaliyah's honor. And I did that, and I got to connect with some very amazing Aaliyah fans in New York. And then after that, we went to a restaurant, and I think it was called Sugar and Spice. And it was a restaurant that was owned by Valerie Simpson and Nick Ashford, the famous group Ashford and Simpson. And I remember at one point I was sitting there. We were sitting at a very large table. And I remarked to one of the people that was there, I said, "Oh, wouldn't that be funny if Ashford and Simpson walked in?" And as if on cue, They both walked in and greeted everyone. That was an incredible moment. And then I was actually able to perform the song with a house band. And this was the first time I'd ever played with a band. These musicians had never heard the song before. And I remember at one point being stunned because it was almost as if I had showed them the charts before the performance, which I did not. They were so good. It was almost as if they were psychic. They knew where each chord change was leading to. And the bass player and the piano player and the drummer, after a few measures, knew the song better than I did. It was pretty cool. Again, I would have preferred to be staying in my apartment, practicing, hashing it out, writing songs, as the introvert in me is wont to do, but I wanted to push myself and go out and experience that. If you find yourself and you feel this is not ready to be released, by all means, don't release it, and be open to the idea that maybe it is, and maybe you're just a very harsh and cruel critic of your art. Which leads me to a topic that I wanted to discuss, which is social media and numbers and fans. If I look at all of the other music that's being put out, say in my genre of singer-songwriter, well, I would never release anything because I look at all of the people that are producing and I say, I could never record something that cool. That production is absolutely incredible. They have 7-octave range to their voice. How could I even compete with that? I'm going to let that cake just burn in the oven because you know what? What's the point? And what I've learned to do, again, with my philosophy of just putting myself out there, is regardless of all that I see on this social media landscape, I still will put out my stuff. I'm still going to put my cake out at the farmer's market because I put so much hard work and love into that cake that I just want to share it. And you might be very surprised. You might find that people stop by and say, you know what? I really like this cake. Okay, enough of that cake analogy. I'm sure I'll come back to it. With social media, you might make a post, you might share something, and I've heard people say this, oh, I only got X amounts of likes or reactions. If you think about it, say you get 10 reactions. If you are in your home studio or in your living room, if you have 10 people there, that's a lot. And in social media nowadays, as we become these dopamine fiends, where we've lost our patience, if you get somebody just to stop by, I'm not going to say it, if you can stop by your page or your post and even take the time to double click and give you that like, you've reached that person. And that is to be celebrated. I saw this video once of, I don't know who it was, but they said, watch what happens when you see somebody who has a huge social reach. Watch the reactions as soon as they post. And so they had their post and they clicked post, publish, and this onslaught of likes started to fill the screen of the phone. Thousands and thousands and thousands. And this person obviously had hundreds of millions of followers. And it was fascinating to watch that. And I remember I was driving in LA one time, and I think in like any city in LA, you'll see things every single day you step outside. And somebody in their window had put a sign, and the sign said, how many of your followers will come to your funeral? And I'm sitting at a stoplight in Silver Lake, and I said, wow, that's pretty deep to see on a sign in traffic. And it made me think, thirsting after all of these likes and this reaction and repost and share, at the end of the day, what does that translate to? I know lots of musicians who are extremely successful and have around 1,000 to 2,000 followers. I made a post about this podcast, how meta, not that meta, the other meta. And I made a post about this podcast, and someone posted, hey, you want 1,000 likes? It's $20. You want 15,000 likes? It's $50. You want 20? It's $130. And it made me laugh because that social currency, you'll see people who say, look, people will not take you seriously unless you have this check next to your name and you have this many likes, and it only costs a couple $100, and then people will think you're awesome. And it's somehow not as cool as the person who is organically connected with 1,000. Imagine 1,000 people in your house or your apartment. That's crazy. Would they fit? Would they be lined up outside? Would they be in your backyard, in your parking garage, on the street, outside the front entrance? And I think in this dopamine-fueled world that we live in, that has somehow changed. If you think about it, somebody will say, oh, I only had 15,000 streams for this song. Imagine being in a stadium with 15,000 people. That's a lot of people. But somehow it doesn't feel the same when it's something you're looking at your phone that in less than a few seconds you're going to scroll on to the next thing. Which leads me to the next thing. What a beautiful segue. I was talking to somebody yesterday and I thought of this quote I heard years ago, and I'm pretty sure it's an Oscar Wilde quote, and I'm pretty sure it's incomplete. We can talk about that later because I'm really trying not to Google in the middle of a podcast recording. And it's the famous phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And it's very easy for me when I put something out that I've worked very hard on and just waded through tons of emotion and frustration to get it. In the blip of a millisecond, I can compare it to something else and watch my joy just fly right out the window. Why is that? Why is it the classical grass is greener? It's very rare. What I would give for the ability to hear my music with someone else's ears, I feel if I was able to do that, I would have this really interesting perspective. But again, it'll never happen. So my ears are what I have. And so I'll always be coming from this perspective. And I've come up with tricks. One I learned a long time ago from a sound engineer was to play the song in your studio or one part of your domicile, and then go into another or stand outside, see how it sounds when it's going through the plaster or through the drywall or the brick to get that other perspective. And I don't know if we'll ever fully be able to know how it actually truly sounds to somebody else. All I know is that we can do our best, we can put it out, and I think if I were starting today, that I might find it daunting if I'm putting something out there, because what am I doing? I'm putting myself out there to be judged, to be compared. And I mentioned in the first episode, but have you thought about American Idol or whatever the current reality show du jour is? Because people are comparing, and you'll bare your soul, and you'll be singing about the most important things of your life. And someone will say, oh, that's cool. Have you heard artist XYZ? Oh my gosh, they are just incredible. And they don't do it maliciously. They're sharing their musical experience. And I've had some doozies of comments given to me over the years. That, interestingly enough, the reaction that I've had when people have said extraordinarily negative things about the art that I've created, it's made me realize how much I believe in my own art. Isn't that interesting? So it's very natural to compare, and I would encourage you to go easy on yourself. We're all on these different paths and different seasons. And sometimes when we're on those paths and seasons, we need to take a pause. We need to take a break. I'm here to tell you, as the authority on pausing, it's okay. It's seriously, it's okay. Oh, you took 5 years off? Oh, that's okay. You took 20 years off? Hey, that's fine. That's totally cool. You bought all this gear and then you ended up selling it because you never used it? That's okay. You recorded all that stuff and then it's been sitting on a hard drive and you didn't release it? That's okay. It's okay to take a pause. I was talking the other day to my wife and she said, you didn't release a song last year, did you? And I said, oh, no, I didn't. And it was like a bucket of cold water being splashed in my face. And I said, oh yeah, I haven't. Why is that? And I had experienced some loss that completely, it was almost as if someone poured honey over my engine. And that engine just ground to a halt. I lost my father, and what I discovered is that for me, the creative part of my brain is tied directly. It's next door. Forget next door neighbors. They're in the same room. Grief is connected directly to my creativity. And I realized that I needed to take the pause and the time that I needed to take. Because is there any real timeline? My timeline is my timeline. And maybe this person has a different timeline. But what I realized is that I needed to go through what I needed to go through. And I needed to be patient and kind to myself through that process and understand that when I was ready, then I was ready. And I have a trilogy of songs that I've been working on for my dad, and I need to take a little bit more time with that. And so I've actually been writing, feels like on the side, and I'm going to start releasing those songs. I'm super excited to share them. And the great thing is after all these years of practice, I'm much more well-suited to critiques, to criticisms, to hearing other people's opinions on you should have done this with the bridge and this with the chorus and the mix should have been this and that. Because I know I can always revisit it and re-release it. But the most important thing for me is I need to put it out. I need to share this into the world, into the universe, into the sonic space, because I have to. There's something inside of me, and I don't know if you have this. It's almost like a compulsion. I have to put it out. If not just for myself, if somebody else connects with it, that's amazing, and I'll be honored. And when I listen to it, I realize these are almost like reading diary excerpts from my life. And I've chosen to work them into the song format, poetry set to music, to share my experience in the hopes that I'll connect with you because you have lived a similar experience. And for me, there's nothing that bonds me more to another human when we've lived the same experience. We take different things out of it, we learn different lessons, but when we're in it and we go through it together, even though we might not physically be together, we might be on different sides of the planet. I want to connect with you on that. So if you're just starting, please be kind to yourself, and please be ready to put stuff out there, and it's not going to feel totally cooked. And that's okay. Please put stuff out there just to share it with the community. What community is that? The community of people who are brave enough to put themselves out, to be compared, to be criticized, to be critiqued, to be judged. That is worthy of recognition. Keep doing what you're doing. It's always the right time to start, and it's too late to quit.